My terrible fiancé used to be friends with benefits with my bully. Years later she begged to sleep with him even though he's dating her best friend. My fiancé and I went to the same high school, but because she was a popular cheerleader and I was a chubby, awkward kid with a haircut, we never interacted. Because of my demeanor, I was always getting bullied by this guy named Chris who was everything I wasn't. He was wealthy, athletic, and good looking. He and his friends did a prank on me, which ended in me covered in manure and being labeled stinky for the rest of my high school years. It was the single, most humiliating part of my life, and I wanted to do everything in my power to get away from Stinky. I hated him and hated any time that I had to be around him. Going to college was a blessing in disguise for me. I was away from all those people, I grew into myself, and I had the ability to reset my identity. I made sure no one knew of Stinky and it was going perfectly well. My fiancé and I ended up going to the same college and we were more acquaintances than we were friends. We only started getting close when I gave her a ride home for Thanksgiving break. After that, it became a habit of riding together for breaks and chatting about life in school. In sophomore year, our talks became deeper and more personal. I realized I was into her on the way home for Christmas and asked her on a date over break. We have a strong relationship, communicate well, and have supported each other through numerous ups and downs. I love this woman and am excited to get married and spend our lives together. The problem arises because of my fiancé and her best friend owning a business together that plans events and helps connect people. Their business really took off and they started to enter a number of exclusive contracts with event spaces and restaurants/breweries. My fiancé came home 2 months ago really excited about a new brewery exploring an exclusive deal, which the brewery ended up signing. They held a dinner to celebrate and my fiancé asked if I wanted to go meet the team from the brewery. She told me that I might have met the owner before, but I didn't think to ask and she didn't bother telling me regardless. Well, it didn't take long for my old high school bully Chris to walk through the door and sit down at our table. He greets my fiancé, then turns to me and says, "Hi Stinky." I was so angry, both at Chris and my fiancé because she knew how much Chris had harassed me. I would have loved a heads up from her, that way I could choose not to go. She didn't mention at any point prior that he was the owner of the brewery and that she was working closely with him. Somehow I made it through dinner, but I asked my fiancé why she didn't tell me. She blew it off as though it was water under the bridge because I had changed and I need to understand that Chris changed too. Considering he was still calling me Stinky, I doubt he changed that much. I told her that wasn't a call for her to make, and she should have told me, but she said I should let bygones be bygones. Over the next couple of weeks, it was clear that my fiancé's best friend and Chris were becoming romantically involved with each other. Chris started showing up to nights out and even came over one night to her best friend's house when we were hanging out and watching TV. I've tried to be open to a new Chris, but he seems like he's the same overly macho, trying too hard to be alpha jerk he was all those years ago. Last week, my fiancé invited me to an industry event, where Chris was at too. I tried to be nice and friendly, but Chris makes it very hard because he drops the occasional Stinky into the conversation, which has my fiancé's best friend dying of laughter. At one point, the girls leave the table and Chris starts talking about how this event might be a good place for him and the best friend to find a woman to have a threesome with. I was completely caught off guard and I asked him what he was talking about, and he said I should know all about this because he, my fiancé, and her best friend had a couple of threesomes in high school. He actually thought that I was having threesomes with the two girls as well. I felt blindsided and didn't know what to say because my fiancé had never once told me about this. When we got home, I asked my fiancé if that was true, and she said yes. Her best friend and Chris were friends with benefits back in high school and they talked about all of them having a threesome together. At first, my fiancé was on the fence about the whole thing, but after having too much to drink at a party, they went through with it. It became a regular thing for them to do whenever one of them was horny. This means that Chris's penis has been inside of my fiancé before. She has kissed Chris before. She has done every single nasty thing with Chris before. I can't even look at my fiancé without feeling a little bit disgusted that she ever let Chris touch her. I expressed that I was upset about the whole thing and that I didn't like that she was keeping so many secrets from me. My fiancé keeps saying that I never asked and she never lied about all this, but, especially with doing business with Chris, it feels like lying by omission to me. Besides, what did she want me to do? Just ask on a random Tuesday if she ever slept with Chris? This is something she should have been upfront to me about, and her not telling me after all this time feels like she is hiding things from me. I'm just struggling with all of this. Chris did his best to make my life awful in high school and now is back. Every time I'm around him, he seems to be belittling me and making fun of me. He even told my fiancé in front of me that she could do better than me and was dating down. She didn't even defend me when he said that. Instead, she said he was joking and I need to stop being so sensitive. We've been arguing about this situation for about a week now. I asked her to cut all contact with him last night, but she called me unreasonable because he's dating her best friend and they all do business together. She keeps asking me why I can't move on and accept that Chris is a different person, but she doesn't realize that he is not capable of change. My terrible fiancé used to be friends with benefits with my bully. Years later she begged to sleep with him even though he's dating her best friend. My fiancé is working with the guy that used to bully me and I just found out she slept with him a lot back in school. I don't know how to deal with this and she defends him every chance she gets. We seem to have a fight about her and my bully Chris every single day. Thing is, I'm not looking to break up with her, I just want to fix things. Well, things didn't go according to plan. I came home from work one day to find out that my fiancé wasn't home and a bunch of her things were missing. I texted her to make sure she was okay and got a long text in response telling me she was going to stay with her sister and she didn't want me to contact her for a few days because she needed some space. I was confused, frustrated and upset but figured that if all she needed was some space, hopefully that would be what could get our relationship back on track. 2 days later, her best friend came over to talk and she confessed that she had been a bad friend to me. There were a number of things she felt like she should tell me but didn't know where to draw the line between her friendship with me and her friendship with my fiancé. A few months before, my fiancé was telling her that she was doubting our relationship. She felt as though because we had gotten together so young, she was missing out on experiences by being with me. My fiancé had a really weird week a while back where she was really distant and kept asking me questions about what it was about her that made me want to get married. She told me later that she had just been in a weird headspace and I kind of forgot about those conversations. When the two girls first met with Chris, my fiancé was really flirty with him. I knew this was a thing she did with clients and while I did find it weird, I knew it was just a culture of the industry. But in this case, my fiancé was extremely flirty with Chris and her friend found it strange. Once my fiancé became aware of Chris hooking up with her best friend, she would regularly ask for details so much so that Daria told me she started lying to her, saying that their hookups were happening less frequently than they actually were so that she wouldn't be hounded for details. My fiancé was constantly hounding her for details on the latest hookup and casually dropped that they should have a threesome with Chris. Her friend said those were things of the past and she didn't feel comfortable doing that anymore. She then brought up my relationship with her, and that's when she flipped a switch and said she was just joking. Except, she made the same joke 4 other times until her friend explicitly told her to stop. Then she got to the biggest thing. On the night that my fiancé left the house, she showed up intoxicated at Chris's place. When he let her in, she tried to sleep with him. Her best friend was in the bedroom and heard what was happening. My fiancé was on top of Chris on the couch, shirt off, and trying to kiss him. She freaked and both her and Chris worked together to kick her out, but my fiancé begged to sleep with Chris one more time. She said she desperately needed it. I was really angry and sad about everything, but I knew I didn't want to be home when she came back. So, I packed a bag and left. My fiancé tried her best to reach out to me, asking where I was and she was fine now. I didn't reply to her, but she somehow found out where I was staying and she showed up on the doorstep. She kept knocking relentlessly on the door, begging to be let in. I opened the door and asked if she was going to try to sleep with me too, but she was confused at first. Then, she connected the dots and tried to apologize. She used the excuse that she was intoxicated to get me to forgive her and said she didn't mean anything that happened. I asked her why she was with me if she really wanted to be with Chris, to which she admitted that Chris never saw her as a romantic partner, only an intimate one. So she never stood a chance. I asked her why she settled for me and she said it was because I was just there. She scoffed at me and asked if I really thought she wanted to be with a guy whose nickname was Stinky. I was trying so hard not to cry in front of her, but that made it really hard to keep up this act. I told her I was filing for divorce immediately and I never wanted to see her again after that.